So we're going to look at 3 different replays at 3 different MMRs of people playing Crystal Maiden. This first one's Guardian 3, then we'll be looking at a Legend 4, and finally an Immortal. And straight away, CM comes playing aggressive into the offlane runes, takes both of them, and now Void is going top, and Void even got a rune, so they got 3 out of the 4 runes here. And CM is TPing up top to help. So really nice reactions here, very good plays right from the start. And in this lane, like placing on the observer, it might get dewarded if those players were looking at their inventory, but I don't think it does. CM also uses her clarity here, but the problem is that it ends up getting cancelled really soon afterwards, which is pretty much pointless, and you're not going to really utilize the mana in this lane at the very start. A lot of players, if they are going to spam out mana, they're going to buy 2 or 3 mangoes rather than relying on clarities, because you get that instantaneous mana burst, and clarities get you to be a little bit too passive in the laning stage. And against Bristleback on level 1, what you want to be doing is right clicking him, and you want to constantly keep doing this, and she's doing it some of the times, which is really nice. And the reason why is because Bristleback does not get his passive until level 2, and you've seen that he already has skilled his quill spray on level 1. So you should just keep right clicking him like this, and it should have been done a little bit more than this, and you would have got effectively more damage out. And if we have a look at Bristle's region, he only got 3 tangos at the start of the game, so it could have been pretty big if you did go for those right clicks early on. So now CM goes and buys a stick here at 4 minutes and 40 seconds, also a pair of boots, and Bounty Hunters after pulling the creep wave in the side camp. Now the runes are about to spawn, and you haven't approached them yet. You're coming to this one, and if Bounty Hunter was sitting on that rune, you probably wouldn't have got it there. And even like vision is not so good with that observer ward. Could have been a little bit better to be able to see Bounty Hunter pulling that camp. And here there's not really much going to happen. That mango was completely unnecessary, and something you could do a little bit better was maybe get this stick earlier against Bristleback and prioritize it in the side shop rather than getting that 4 minutes and 40 seconds. And pretty soon here now Bristle dives this tower and uses a Crystal Nova on him, which slows him. So while he's committed this really far position, you ended up slowing him here at this spot, which ends up making it the furthest committed position closest to the tower, so the slow is going to have the biggest impact outwards. So that was really good timing on that. Pretty impressive for a Guardian player. So now Bristle has come back to the lane here. Faces Void is time dilating him. He missed the time dilation, and Bristle is coming to dive you. Bristle doesn't decide to turn around. Not a good play by Bristle there. He overcommitted, but it's good that at least this Crystal Maiden punished him. And a lot of players at that point... Okay. okay. A lot of players would have gone a 1-1-2 or 1-1-3 build at that point. If you'd gone maxing out this arcane aura, this CM would have probably ended up dying there. That little bit of a difference of the extra frostbite. So now you've hit level 6 before Faces Void, and a lot of the time people will tell you should just let your carry get experience. But at this rank, and even a little bit higher like in Crusader, I would actually recommend not to just let your allies go solo. A lot of the time they're not able to sustain in lane, but in this scenario Faces Void is significantly stronger than Bristleback, so it doesn't really make much sense to be leeching experience in this scenario. And as you do now going into the jungle, which is nice to get level 6 on Void. And a lot of the time the reason why you let someone get experience earlier is because CM kind of caps out on her damage or her kill capability at around level 4 or 5, and when you get level 6 the ultimate doesn't really do that much damage. People either cancel it very easily or else they can just run away from it. So now instantly you're putting down a sentry here. This is really nice. So you're preventing the enemy from getting any sort of vision in your jungle, and you realize that this Bounty Hunter is going to be pressuring this Tinker from getting his march off constantly and spamming it. And if we have again look at the network, Tinker is still at the top and Faces Void. So this is catching Bounty Hunter here in the jungle, and the sentry plus the Slardr's ult catches Bounty really easy there. That's a really nice pickup that you wouldn't have got if you weren't buying these sentries. And you're not mass buying sentries, but you're putting them in really good spots. So something here that's pretty small that I want to point out that makes a big difference, and it doesn't, in this scenario, it doesn't lead to a kill or assist or anything, but it can increase your probability of getting kills. So watch as this Bristleback is walking closer to your tier 1 tower. You slow him, so you're slowing him down and giving him information what's happening up high ground. He does happen to have vision across the stairs here in the river, but you're slowing him down from walking under your tier 1 tower. You want to slow him when he's running away. You want him to commit as far as position as possible, and then you root him afterwards. Typically you want to do the root and then the Crystal Nova afterwards, so that you get the maximum combination of your crowd control, because you don't want to slow at the same time that he's rooted. You want him to stack on top. You don't want him to stack at the same time, pretty much. So now it comes to using the ultimate, and PA is after dying here, and you go on Bristle, you use your 2 spells and stack the crowd control on top of each other, which is not optimal. They end up focusing here you with a lot of spells, and even though you didn't get damage with your ultimate, look at how far they've committed upwards. Bounty Hunter has died, PA died before you spawn, and now that Laguna Blade is gone, if we have a look down here what Faceless Void is doing, Faceless Void is not going to get Laguna Bladed because you got Laguna Bladed, and this Bristle also ends up dying here, and Lena could have potentially died there if the Tinker went and focused her as well. That's a really big win, and people talk about tactical feeding. That is pretty much the definition of it there. So I've skipped a little bit further into the match, and I want to focus on the early game mostly for this video, but looking at the items that she's decided to get, she went to Aghanim Scepter, which her ulti really isn't that impactful because it's really too easy to cancel. Zeus has gone Aghanims as well, so his Nimbus can cancel your ulti at a global range because it has a mini stun involved with his Nimbus. And this is a lot of the reason why people go BKB first and then Aghanims. And even with BKB getting it later, people end up buying Abyssal Blade, and I think PA this match ends up getting Abyssal Blade as well, so she can really easily not only bash to stop your ulti, but she can Abyssal Blade you and guarantee that you're going to get stunned through BKB. So it ends up being useless, this BKB does. And if we look at her talent build, it ends up being even worse than this. And she's decided to not go the GPM talent, went instead the mana cost, mana loss reduction aura. And now we end up seeing here, when Zeus uses a Nimbus, at this point you should be focusing the Nimbus. When you have this attack speed talent, even though you've opted to go for it, the best hero in the game for destroying this Nimbus is CM. Any hero, I can't even think of one that would be better than it, but you never end up focusing it until Bristle is dead here, and then you start attacking it. So it takes super long time before you make that decision. So here's the other problem with this build. You'll end up seeing PA goes in on you, she ends up bashing you with BKB, and there's nothing you can really do. Even if you BKB there, the duration it takes for the fade delay of Glimmer Cape, you wouldn't have survived there. And you'll just realistically, what's end up going to happen is that you'll get Hex like this, you die, and you BKB afterwards. Lena, I think, has a Shadow Blade, and these are just stuff that you can't really rely on. So you end up needing to focus on going a build that produces more reliable results. A lot of these games just end up going on really long. It's a 60-minute match, and your items do not look like a 60-minute CM. This is why the GPM talent would have been even better, and it's significantly better to get the GPM talent at lower ranks. And here, even with the attack speed talent and Glimmer Cape, it doesn't really formulate into anything if you don't have BKB while you're attacking. So your BKB usage was not that smart, and your items are really lacking. If you get a Hex, it's pretty much the ultimate late game item. So now we're going to look at a Legend 4 CM, and this time you've walked up here into this rune with Silencer and Sven, and you end up catching this Pudge really early on. Really nice, and Pudge got Wrath level 1. You got that little bit of information too, and you end up seeing here you place an Observer Ward, which the enemy might have seen that just as Pudge teleported there. I don't know if they did or not, but it's not always the best position for a ward. It regularly gets dewarded. I think at Legend it doesn't get dewarded that often, and people just get away with this Observer Ward position. It's really predictable spot. So now Silencer is baiting here. He's after aggroing the creep wave as well. Not the best time to start attacking the enemy. You're in position though, you get a Frostbite here, and Silencer, Sven's in position too. Really nice, putting in the body blocks here, and you end up catching Pudge without allowing him to get the deny here, and Sven also unfortunately didn't get the kill. You got the kill instead, so it works out pretty nice there. You've got 2 kills already starting out, but these kills are not so impactful as you might think, because a lot of the game at the moment in the current patch is based around mid-game team fights. So These kills are not super massive. As you see, you only got 138 gold for killing Pudge, and I think that's split between the other heroes, so it doesn't work out as being that great. And tri-lanes are not that popular either. Now you end up single pulling this camp here, which is nice that you did some pulling. We saw the Guardian did 0 pulling and jungled a little bit. Now you have pretty good awareness to look and move your camera here. You cancel Slark's TP, and Slark goes through the tree line and dies to the tier 2 tower here. So this is really nice rotation that you did here, and you should keep staying top here. And Silencer was probably originally thinking about coming top a little bit later, but because you're here now, you got to be adaptive based on what's happening in the game and stay top like this. You don't have TP for another 50 or 60 seconds, so this is the best idea to stay up there. You could have even went and pulled that offlane creeps where the big camp is there. Something you could have done slightly different. Instead, you're deciding to walk down from middle. You're kind of not really useful here, and now you're trying to make a decision where you go next. You've really just wasted a lot of time here. It doesn't really seem like much, but it's definitely something that you will see differentiate a lot from the next tier up of players. Now, one of the things that you don't want to do in lane as CM is to constantly harass like this, because once Pudge has a few levels, he's going to have flesh heap stacks and just passively heal all of it back up. It's kind of OP, I guess, for Pudge in the offlane, but this small little, you're pretty much like firing pebbles at Pudge. It's like, it just bounce off him. It's kind of like a waste of time. You want to focus a lot more on stacking. You miss the stack there, so I'm being a little bit more critical of this, as you see, in comparison to the Guardian player, but these are the differences that you're going to see between a high ancient or mid-ancient support and someone who's a legend. And now you're committing here. The tree protector has pretty much been right clicking you this whole time, so you took a huge amount more harass. This tri-lane against tri-lane, you get kill on Pudge here and working out really nice here. And at this point you go and commit a little bit further. But if we look at this from Line's perspective, so we go back 10 seconds, we look at Line. At this position here, Line has 7 seconds, 5, 3, 2, 1. If Line turned around there and just used his Earth Spike onto the ground, the Earth Spike has only, I think it's a 600 range here, but if you click on the ground it's 1000 or 1200. He would have been able to kill you there, pretty much what I'm saying, but he'd never ended up doing something pretty small but committing a little bit too far. And I think you did pretty much the same thing. You shouldn't even be this low health either, because of the fact that Tree got like a ton of right clicks free onto you for no reason. So this lane has turned out really nice. Like, Sven is really massively high net worth, Centaur is winning his lane, and you end up getting blocked in here, and now you're in the corner, and this ends up being a really good Fisher by Earthshaker. Like, Silencer's blocking you in too, you're still stuck. So this Fisher really is after outplaying you. After missing this spell, you kind of wouldn't have been in range. I was looking at it, the movement speed was not good enough for CM, and now you're tanking a bunch of tower hits. Lion could have stunned you there if he had a stun, and now you're tanking the creep wave. The creep wave gets like glyphed, I think, as well. It's just not good tower dive there at all, and that's pretty much the definition of getting outplayed. The two supports end up dying for a dive there, and the enemy supports have come around and counterplayed you really hard. And even something that you need to take into consideration with these hero picks is Tree Protector's living armor. His living armor is level 0 right now, but if he put 1 or 2 points into it, it could have been a big difference to allow Earthshaker to survive through that as well, and your Crystal Nova wouldn't have done enough damage because of the damage block from living armor. So now it's 7 minutes into the game. You haven't bought any observer wards. There's really just one on the middle lane that I think Ember Spirit got at the start. You put down a sentry here, and now the observer wards should have been coming at that point. Roughly around the 6 to 8 minute period, you should be putting down another observer ward, but you don't end up doing that. You instead end up getting caught here out of position, and even though it's unpredictable that Pudge is going to be there, the line, it's kind of like a stupid play there, and now you see Silencers dying here as well. So your supports are playing on this team now, are like playing much worse than the enemy. You've given away a little bit too many kills. So you end up seeing that a lot of what's happened in the laning stage, getting those really early kills, did not really set Pudge back that much. He got level 6 like at 8-9 minutes, and Centaur is here on top, and really the supports, what they should have been doing was coming top, help Centaur, and put even more pressure on Slark. You don't want to let Slark free farm. That's the worst thing you can do against that hero. So as a support, you need to go and help this offlaner that's performing incredibly well, even though he's jungling now. But the problem is that Centaur probably can't go to his lane, but if you were there with him, you would be able to stay top with him. Instead, you're coming bottom helping Sven, which is rather okay, and your root now does not cancel Pudge's ult, but you do get a kinetic slow, or kinetic, or he can't move, it's rooted, it's called. A long time since it was called a kinetic slow. But the idea is that you want to prevent Pudge from being able to follow after your carry as he's trying to rot him and slow him down. So you end up dying here too as a result of this. And really, even if Sven died there, if you were at the other side of the other lane and putting pressure to kill their carry, it might just be an even enough trade, rather instead you end up dying like this. You're not really looking where you're teleporting that well. You are looking before you press TP, but the problem is right here, Pudge could hook you, and you would probably end up dying if Treant followed after him and Lion as well. But Pudge unfortunately only has 10 seconds left in his hook, and he has only 1 point in it. So if he had 1 or 2 more levels in this, he would have had the cooldown ready. 2 levels would have been 10 seconds less, and he probably would have been able to finish you off here. And even at this point when he's walking away, he could have walked down and stayed in the low ground. It kind of a risky play that you end up doing with this teleport, but it ends up working out regardless. So Silencers after died under the tower here by Echo Slam, and you're after getting rooted here on CM under the enemy tower, and now you ult kind of just to try and get some damage out. And it's pretty obvious that a skill that this CM is lacking quite heavily is good tower diving skills, something that definitely want to work on here. And Earthshaker, he gets away as well, and Ember ends up dying as well. Jeez, that was bad. And a lot of those kills that you were getting early on, they're just totally being negated here by everything that you're doing in the past like 3 or 4 minutes. So now you're after end up placing down 2 wards, and the 2 ward positions are here at this point, and the other one is over here. And the problem is that this observer ward was probably end up seen by the enemy's observer ward at this point. The problem is that this ward should have been here earlier. It's currently 15 minutes, and this is really your first time coming top, and what Centaur really needs is to be able to keep pushing in and pressuring this tower. As you see, he has some damage done already at a very early stage. So you want to get vision up here so you can see the shrine, and that the enemy can go in, or your ally offlaner can go and keep applying this pressure. And if you have a look at Centaur's build, he's gone, instead of an initiation build, he's going super tank, really hard to kill, and no one's really able to kill him at this point. So you have to get vision in this area somehow, just so you can see the enemy rotations coming for Centaur, and then he can escape with his stampede or just a teleport. And these are pretty big things that you realize to enable your offlaner to play better. Now this match ends up kind of just winning as an auto win, because the Slark and Pudge ends up disconnecting. I think there was some problem with the server or something, or the Slark's internet went. He wasn't playing so well anyway, this Slark. He ended up dying a lot. He had 3k. Oh no, 3k net worth Slark. Really? CM has the same GPA. Legend carries, boys. Legend carries. Yeah, so I guess your offlaner won you this game. So now we're looking at an Immortal rank 108 CM. And what ends up happening at the rune was CM got some harassing. And you see that what CM does straight away here is just focus on harassing Omni Knight. And she's depleted all of her mana, but look, Omni Knight has lost like 60% of his health already, and it's only 50 seconds into the game. Pretty big, and this build is a little bit different than what you see the other players doing. You also see big difference here is buying the Sentry Ward at the start of the game. At this rank, a lot of the time people try and block the offlane camp. CM goes and checks this, and if she had to wait for a Sentry Ward to come at this point, it would have taken another minute, another 2 minutes, because the mid laner is going to want to prioritize that courier, and this allows the mid laner to prioritize the courier by not having to call it again just to get a sentry. Now this ends up being that she can pull the camp pretty soon after this, but there's no point to unblocking that camp and getting that kill on a ward if you're not going to pull it afterwards. Now unfortunately this death ends up happening here, and as we've been seeing, these deaths early on don't really lead into much. She buys some another mango, and comes back to the lane. And as I was saying, like, those deaths early on are not worth too much. That was first blood death, so it's not super optimal. And you'll end up seeing that she goes and pulls these camp a single pull, and these satyr creeps, or what are they called? I don't know what they're called, but those are the strongest creeps in the small camps, so they do the most damage to the creeps. So clearing them like this is okay. Rubik is going to contest it, and Omni Knight, and this big camp as well, Naga is trying to pull it. So there's a real exploitation of using these jungle camps as part of the laning stage, and Omni Knight gets closer, gets the passive to slow her, and now just gets run down. Pretty easy kill again. But those kills are not worth that much unless Omni Knight can snowball and turn that into something. CM acts like a courier now, position 6 player, brings the Wraith Band and to the Naga. So the courier CM ends up getting a kill here on Rubik, and that kill kind of like turns around the goal difference, and it allows CM to get that bounty rune across the river that Rubik would have prevented her from getting. CM is pretty weak at around the 5-minute mark when the bounty runes spawn, so having your carry being involved with the CM ends up being really big in order to get that rune, or even getting a kill just as a 5-minute rune spawn isn't much kill potential. So she rotates mid, gets this kill out here onto Husker. Really nice timing to come on mid, and meanwhile Naga is getting free experience in bottom. And at lower ranks, I would heavily recommend you communicate your ally to play safe while you're gone from the lane, because they end up dying. Now this Omni Knight knew that CM was middle, and you'll end up seeing this Naga is going to die here. She's getting dived here by Omni Knight, who can keep chasing her, and Omni Knight keeps switching the aggro back to the creeps here, and CM can't really save anything here. And this is what I'm talking about, where it's up to Omni Knight to put this momentum and bring it into something else, and this has allowed him to buy phase boots, which really enable that dive with the soul ring. And CM is even getting dived here as well, and CM gets taken down here. She tries to deny herself to the creeps, so not very good overall, and that's really CM's fault in that scenario. Now CM comes back to like D-ward stuff. They were blocking the ancient camp, and she also, I don't think she either didn't have enough mana for a teleport, or she teleported somewhere and cancelled it. Maybe she cancelled it, but Naga ends up dying a second time under her own tower, and CM did not even move her camera to see any of that happening. So that's a pretty big mistake. There's a turnaround here, the Frostbite into Hex and Shackle, and it's really nice that they're not stacking their crowd control on top of each other, and that they're using one after the other. Now look how Crystal Maiden uses her Nova into the fog. When Lycan goes out of the trees, Nova is the best spell to use last, because when a hero is out of vision, that's the only one that you can use to get damage onto the enemy. And you even see that here we get a kill onto the Lycan, and that's a really big kill, because Lycan is very, this draft that the enemy have, they're very determined on finishing the game out early because of Husker and Lycan. The advantage of this lineup that with CM, Aura and Naga, you'll end up seeing that Naga can now max out her mirror image and keep spamming it constantly. She's cutting the creep wave here like this, so this ends up being pretty much a jungle Naga, but this ends up being a lot easier to do because of the CM Aura. Now CM tries to bait them in here to get them to dive, so really nice, and Rubik is diving as well, but you end up seeing that TA was not in position. So if we have a look at TA's position here, she's focusing Ogre, typical Ogre, tanking everything. So she's not in position, so this dive ends up never getting punished, and Rubik gets the away here. And you'll even end up seeing here TA is going to get focused down, and CM is respawning. So when CM respawns back in, she now has her ultimate. I think she got like a tome there and used it, and she's getting pushed away here by Husker's Q, which is kind of a new interaction. Is it his Q? It's one of his spells anyway. Yeah, it's his Q. So his first spell is change the interaction, how you can play against Husker, and your ult is only going to act kind of as armor to get the enemy to flee away from the position that they're trying to commit to. And one thing that seems pretty small is that CM has been walking around for the past couple of minutes with this sentry and observers, and the enemy supports are going to constantly be looking at her inventory to see where she's going to be placing them. Now this occupies some of their time, that's going to make them play slightly worse if they're constantly having to think about where CM is going next. She also has 3 raindrops left. One of them are after activating there with the centaur creep, and she ends up using stick as well 5 heroes here plus a Ravage. Oh, this Lycan, he's getting shut down pretty hard here, and that's his second death, even though he's highest net worth after Omni Knight. You look at the network graph and you see that all the cores on the Dire side are doing incredibly well, but CM's team somehow is going to come back into this, and one of the reasons why is because Omni Knight has gone Hand of Midas. This ends up being really bad based on what Omni Knight's team is trying to end up doing, and it doesn't really turn out to be very impactful and really throws off their momentum that they were going for with their draft. It's definitely kind of a stalemate of that whole engagement going into play, but this ends up being really good, catching individual heroes like Husker out of position, especially seeing as he's one of the highest net worth heroes at the moment. This really turns the momentum in favor of the Radiant. Now this ends up being again where really soon afterwards we're catching Omni Knight, and maybe even Lycan will get caught here as well. Yes, Naga is going to dive him here. She throws a net on him, and Lycan can't run away. He doesn't have his ulti with the Crystal Nova on top of this, and catches him here as well. So now this is pretty, like, in the past like 3-4 minutes, those little bits of fights have made more difference than really anything that's happened up until this point in the game. So now Shadow Shaman and Templar Assassin have gone Roshan, and CM comes to come fight this as well. Lycan is here to fight, and they're trying to turn this around. TA is melded at one point. She gets pushed back, and Ravage comes out. Now Husker does get stunned here. CM then decides to ult, but Rubik just stole Ravage here. He wrapped around with his smoke, and CM gets perma-stunned and dies. Now she did have a raindrops in her backpack that she could have swapped out for the Quelling Blade. The Quelling Blade is there to deward observers, but it ends up being the Templar Assassin ends up doing a pretty nice play here, and Naga, and this ends up being again another big momentum shift, and this is only a couple of minutes afterwards again. And if we have a look here now at the hero levels, all of the highest hero levels are on Radiant, and the net worth as highest of Naga and TA. So now what we end up seeing is that Husker and Lycan, who were doing really well 5 to 10 minutes ago, are now being set behind. They're falling behind. They're not really growing at the same rate as the other core players. So CM has had a big impact in doing that, and even her death there is not so big, but it ends up gaining them Roshan out of that interaction. When you're playing against Rubik as CM, and the Immortal player probably knows this, is that Rubik has a long cast time on his spell steal before he has Aghanims. It's a 2-second cooldown with Aghanims. It's basically like no cooldown because it's so low, and CM has to play around that. So it's really easy for him to steal Freezing Field because she's standing in one position. She can't use any other spells while she's channeling her ulti, and this is the same with all channeled abilities except stuff like Witch Doctor. I think he can toggle on and off, and I think Pudge as well can toggle on and off Rot, and that counts as casting the spell. So it ends up being with CM you can't really get away with your ulti without Rubik stealing it, but Rubik is trying to steal other spells, so you wait for him to steal some spell, and then you use your ulti afterwards. So as you see, this game is really fast snowballing out of control and gaining more and more ground on the Radiant side, and Lycan's match has not gone so well. If we have a look at the net worth overall, CM is only slightly behind him, and I think with hero 11, Lycan's only level 12 and CM is level 12. Oh no, Lycan is like the lowest of this. Is the carry, guys. I was talking about legend carries. Oh, immortal carries, pleberinos. So at this point you really just see that the Radiant team are just going to keep pushing down objectives and keeping structured gameplay, disciplined gameplay, and putting down observer ward sentries into the jungle or wherever they see fit to get vision. But it's important that CM is not getting picked off individually, because that does enable the enemy team to get that slight little bit of extra ground back into the game. So this is just ends up being pretty neat gameplay, and you end up seeing now that Husker comes out here, I think, and gets caught. CM stays back. Good position here. Husker was probably going to go on CM first, but she's hiding back in the trees. Husker wastes his spells, and now he gets caught out of position, and this really turns out to be pretty much the last fight in the game. And so if you enjoyed this video, if you want to see more Dota content like this, make sure you subscribe.